I've been driving Uber for about 3 years. I've had all kinds of passengers, drunk, funny, angry, chatty, and even completely silent. But what happened one rainy night made me want to quit forever. It was a Thursday, and the rain hadn't stopped since the evening. I had picked up a few people from downtown, mostly people trying to get home from work or the bars. Around 11 at night, I was about to log off and go home when a ride request popped up just a few blocks away. The pickup location was outside an old apartment building I had seen before but never thought much of. I almost ignored the request. But something made me accept it. Maybe I just wanted to make a bit more before ending the shift. I drove over, and the area looked darker than usual, probably because of the storm. The streetlights were flickering, and there were barely any cars passing by. I pulled up to the building, but I didn't see anyone. I waited for about 2 minutes and then tapped the "I've arrived" button. Just as I did, the back door opened slowly, and a woman got in. She was wearing a long black coat with a hood, and her head was down. She didn't say anything, just quietly closed the door. "Hi there," I said, trying to be polite, heading to the address you entered. She didn't respond. I looked back briefly and she gave a small nod, so I started driving. The destination was about 25 minutes away on the edge of town, close to the woods. It struck me as a bit odd because the location was pretty remote, but people go all sorts of places, so I didn't think too hard about it. As I drove, the silence in the car started to feel heavy. Usually, I play some soft music, but for some reason, I had forgotten to turn it on. All I could hear was the sound of the rain hitting the windshield and the occasional squeak of the wipers. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw the woman sitting there completely still, her face hidden by the hood. I tried a few more times to make conversation. "Rough night, huh?" "It's rained something else," I said with a small chuckle. No answer. I thought maybe she didn't want to talk or was having a bad day. But the silence wasn't just awkward. It felt wrong. About 10 minutes into the ride, I felt a sudden chill in the car. I checked the AC, thinking maybe I had it on too high, but it was off. The windows weren't open either. Still, the air around me felt freezing. I glanced back again. She hadn't moved at all. I looked back to the road, and that's when I noticed something strange in the rearview mirror. For just a second, I thought I saw her face, with dark, sunken eyes staring directly at me, but when I looked back again, her head was still down. I shook it off. Maybe I was just tired. But my stomach felt tight. Something wasn't right. I kept driving, trying to ignore the unease. Passed through a small tunnel on the way out of the city, and that's when I heard it, a whisper. It was faint, but definitely inside the car. I couldn't understand what it said, but it made my skin crawl. I looked in the mirror again. She was still, dead still. But the whisper came again, a little louder this time, and I swear it came from behind me. "Don't turn around," it said clearly now, in a soft, hoarse voice. My heart stopped. I gripped the wheel tighter. I was almost at the destination. I just wanted this ride to be over, kept my eyes forward, trying not to panic. The road ahead was empty, and the woods around us seemed darker than usual. I checked the GPS, it said I was just 5 minutes away. That's when my phone screen flickered and turned off. The GPS app crashed. I tried to restart it, but nothing worked. "I need to know where to turn," I muttered to myself, more to break the silence than anything. The voice spoke again. "Keep going, you'll see it." I didn't ask who said that. I knew. My voice trembled as I said, "Okay," and drove on. I didn't want to look back anymore. I kept my eyes locked on the road. Then I saw it, a narrow dirt path branching off the main road, barely visible in the rain. I wouldn't have noticed it if I hadn't been told to look. I turned onto it slowly, the tires crunching on the wet gravel. Trees closed in around me, and the rain was heavier. Now, after about 2 minutes, the path ended in front of an old, abandoned-looking house. The windows were boarded up, and the porch was falling apart. "Here?" I asked quietly. The back door opened by itself, slowly. I looked in the mirror. She was gone, just gone. No sound, no movement. My heart dropped. I hadn't heard the door open, and she never stepped out. I would have noticed. I turned around fully. The back seat was empty, but it was wet. not just a little. The entire seat was soaked like someone had sat in it, dripping wet. I got out of the car and looked around. No one, just trees in the house. I was shaking. I took out my phone to check the ride history. There was no record of the ride. No name, no pickup or drop-off. Nothing. I was about to get back in the car when I saw something on the back seat, a small pendant shaped like a teardrop. It was cold to the touch. I left it there, got in, and drove as fast as I could back to the city. I didn't care about the wet seat or the cold air. I just wanted to get away. For days after that, my car felt wrong. The back seat always looked darker, like a shadow was sitting there. I started hearing whispers when I was alone, especially if I drove at night. I stopped doing night shifts, then I quit Uber altogether. A few weeks later, I searched the address online. The house had been abandoned for over 30 years. A woman had lived there. She went missing one rainy night and was never found. Her last known location? That old apartment building I picked her up from? I don't know what she wanted or why she chose me, but I still see her in my dreams sometimes, sitting in the back seat, whispering things I can't understand. And I never drive after dark anymore. I never thought a simple job like driving for Uber would end up being the most terrifying experience of my life. It was supposed to be a side gig, just something to help pay the rent while I finished school. Mostly drove in the evenings after classes and sometimes on weekends. I enjoyed the freedom of it, meeting new people, and listening to music while driving around the city. Nothing ever really scared me about it until the night I picked up a man who knew way too much about me. It started off like any other night. I had just dropped off a couple at a restaurant downtown and was waiting for the next request when I got a ping. The pickup was only 2 blocks away, near a quiet intersection with a couple of closed shops. I drove over, and as I pulled up, I saw a man standing alone under a streetlight. He was tall, wearing a gray hoodie with the hood up, and he stood perfectly still, not checking his phone like most riders do. As soon as I stopped, he opened the back door and got in. "Good evening," I said, glancing at him through the mirror. He looked up at me with a slight smile. "Hello, Emma," he said, calm and casual. My heart skipped a beat. I never told him my name. I didn't have a name tag in the car. The app doesn't show the driver's full name to riders, just the first letter, like E. I forced a smile and said, "Do I know you?" Smiled again, not answering the question. "Your necklace. You wear it all the time, don't you?" I froze. The necklace he was talking about was a small silver heart my grandmother gave me. I wore it every day, but it was under my shirt. No one could see it unless they already knew. It was there. I tried to laugh it off. "You must be mistaking me for someone else." "No," he said. "I know exactly who you are." That's when I looked at the pickup name on the app. It just said M. No picture, no real name, no rating history. I should have canceled the ride the moment I saw that, but it was too late now. "Where are we heading?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just drive," he said. "I'll tell you when to turn." My hands were sweating as I put the car in drive. I didn't want to cause a scene or make him angry, so I followed his directions. He had me take a long, winding route through side streets and alleys, away from main roads. As we drove, he kept talking. Not about himself, but about me. "Your favorite color is blue? You like to paint in your spare time, even though you say you're not very good? You live alone, but you always leave a light on in the hallway when you sleep." I was shaking. He was describing my life in perfect detail. Things I never posted online. Things you could only know if you watched me for a long time. "How do you know all this?" I finally snapped. He didn't answer. "What?" Looked out the window. I reached down and turned on my phone's voice recorder silently. I had no idea if I would need evidence, but I knew this wasn't a normal passenger. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You should stop leaving your window open at night. Someone could get in." That was it. Slammed on the brakes and said, "Get out of my car. Now." He looked at me through the mirror, his face calm, like he wasn't surprised. "Are you sure you want to do that?" he asked. "You don't know what I'll do if you make me walk?" I didn't care. I was done playing nice. I unlocked the doors and shouted, "Get out!" He opened the door slowly, stepped out, and stood there for a moment. Then he leaned down and said through the open window, "See you soon, Emma." Then he walked off into the darkness. I drove away as fast as I could, heart pounding, not caring where I was going. I ended the ride in the app, but again, there was no trip record. It was like the ride never happened. I reported it to Uber, but all they said was that they'd look into it. I even went to the police, but without a real name, license plate, or proof, they couldn't do anything. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about everything he said, about how he knew where I lived, what I liked, what I did when. I thought no one was watching. The next morning, I found a note taped to my front door. No envelope, no name, just a small piece of paper that said, "Thanks for the ride." I moved out a week later. Changed my number, deleted all my social media, stopped driving Uber completely. I stayed with a friend for a while until I found a new place on the other side of the city. I thought maybe he'd lose track of me. I thought maybe it was over. But a few months later, I got a new job at a bookstore. I kept things quiet, didn't tell anyone my address, never posted online. One afternoon, I was working the counter when a man came in and walked straight past me. I couldn't see his face clearly, but he had the same build, the same slow walk. He didn't buy anything, just walked to the back of the store, paused for a moment, then left. When I looked where he had stopped, I saw a book pulled halfway out of the shelf. It was a collection of short stories. The one visible on the open page was called "The Girl in the Car." I haven't seen him since, but I know he's still out there. Feel it. I still hear noises outside my window at night. Sometimes I find footprints in the mud outside my apartment, even though no one is supposed to be back there. I changed everything about my life, but I still feel like he's watching. Uber was just the beginning. I don't know how long he was following me before that ride. I don't know why he chose me. I don't know what he wants. But I know this. When a stranger gets in your car and already knows your name, don't try to be polite. Don't try to act tough. Just drive straight to the nearest police station and hope it's not already too late. I had been driving Uber for over a year without anything strange happening, and I never believed in ghosts or haunted places or any of that stuff. Not really, even though other drivers sometimes told weird stories about late-night rides and strange passengers, but I always thought they were just making things up to sound interesting. Until one cold night in late autumn, when I got a request from a part of town I didn't normally drive in. The edge of the city near the old factories and warehouses, a place called Black Hollow that people usually avoided because most of it was shut down and half the buildings were falling apart. I thought it was strange to get a request from there, but I was trying to hit my bonus for the week. So I accepted it without thinking too much. The app said the rider's name was Daniel, and the pickup point was an old corner just before an overpass. So I headed there, and when I arrived, the area was quiet and dark, with just one flickering street lamp and no other cars around. But there was a man standing by the curb, wearing a brown coat and a flat cap, looking down at his feet, and as I pulled up, he raised his head slowly and looked right at me with a blank expression, then got into the back seat without saying a word. "Hi, Daniel," I asked, and he nodded, though he didn't smile or say anything. He just looked straight ahead. "All right, let's get you going," I said, checking the app, and I noticed the drop-off location was even deeper into Black Hollow, close to an abandoned paper mill that I remembered hearing about years ago because a fire had shut it down and it had never reopened. It seemed odd that someone would go there so late at night, but again, I just assumed maybe he worked night security or something. The roads got worse as we drove. Cracked pavement and potholes and broken street signs, and there were no lights in most of the buildings we passed. I tried to make small talk and asked, "Do you work out here?" But he didn't answer. I glanced in the mirror and saw that he was staring at me now, not smiling, just watching me, which made my skin crawl. But I tried to stay calm and focus on the road. After a few minutes, I heard a soft sound like whispering. Very faint, and I assumed maybe it was a radio coming from one of the empty buildings. But then I realized it was coming from inside the car, and when I turned the radio dial, it was already off. I looked back again, and he was looking forward now, his lips not moving, but the whispering continued. I couldn't understand the words, but they sounded like someone was saying my name over and over, very low and breathy. "Alex. Alex. Alex. I started to feel sick to my stomach and gripped the wheel tighter, thinking I was just imagining things, maybe from being tired. But then the air in the car turned cold, colder than it had been outside, and the windows started to fog up from the inside even though I hadn't turned on the heat. I wiped my sleeve across the windshield to clear it and saw that we were getting close to the paper mill. The trees lining the road were tall and bare, like skeletons reaching toward the sky. And the building ahead was huge, blackened from the fire, with broken windows and a partially collapsed roof. The app told me we had arrived, but the man in the back didn't move or speak. "We're here," I said, turning around, but he was gone. The seat was empty. I slammed on the brakes in shock and turned on the dome light, staring at the back seat where he had been just seconds ago. But there was no one there, and the door had never opened. The child lock was on, and I would have heard it if he got out, but there was no sound. It's just silence, and the sound of my own breathing, and then I noticed something that made my blood freeze. The back seat where he had been sitting was wet and smelled like burned wood. An old smoke. I looked down and saw black smudges like ash on the floor mat. I jumped out of the car and looked around, but there was no one in sight. Just the ruined shell of the mill and the empty road. I grabbed my phone to call someone, but the app had frozen. And when I tried to go back and look at the ride history, there was no record of the trip. No Daniel, no pickup, no drop-off. It was like it had never happened. I started the car and turned around, driving as fast as I could back toward the city. Trying not to look in the mirror, but every time I glanced up, I thought I saw a figure sitting there again in the back, just for a split second, then gone. When I got home that night, I sat in my car for a long time, trying to understand what had happened. And the next morning, I checked online for anything related to the old mill. What I found chilled me to the bone. There had been a fire there exactly 10 years ago to the day, and a night shift worker named Daniel H. had died. Trapped inside while trying to save others, his body was never recovered. It's only his work coat and cap were found, and the article had a photo of him. He was the exact man who had gotten into my car the night before. Same face, same expression, same clothes. I shut my laptop and didn't drive for a week. I couldn't even sit in my car without getting scared. Eventually I went back to work, but I avoided that side of town forever. I never drove at night again. To this day, I don't know what he wanted or why he came back. Maybe he just wanted one last ride home, or maybe something darker. But I'll never forget the cold whisper of my name and the empty back seat soaked with ash. It was a Friday night, and I'd been driving for Uber since about 5 in the evening. I was trying to hit my bonus goal for the weekend before calling it a night, the usual mix of airport runs. Dinner pickups and bar drops. Nothing unusual, just routine. I was getting tired and was thinking of logging off when I got a request from a location about 10 minutes away. It was near a convenience store on the edge of town. Not the nicest part, but not too bad either. The rider's name was listed as Chris, and the destination said private, which meant the address was hidden until the ride started. I hesitated, but figured I'd take one last ride and be done. I arrived and saw a man standing by a parked car wearing dark jeans, a leather jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He walked quickly toward my car, got in the back seat, and said, "Thanks for coming." I gave a tired smile and said, "No problem. Where are we headed?" And he replied, "Just start driving. I'll tell you where to go." I was immediately uncomfortable because riders are supposed to enter their destination. And something about the way he talked was just cold, flat, emotionless. Still, I nodded and pulled away from the curb, telling myself to just get through it. He gave directions in short clipped phrases left here. "Nix right. Go straight." But the path he was taking led toward a part of town I didn't know well. A lot of warehouses, closed lots, and very few streetlights. The kind of place where nothing good happens after dark. I tried to make light conversation, asking if he was meeting someone or heading home, but he didn't answer. Instead, he said something that made my skin crawl. "Keep your hands on the wheel. Don't turn around, and don't do anything stupid." I froze, staring at the road, my heart pounding. And then I felt it, the cold press of metal against the back of my seat near my shoulder. It was unmistakable. "A gun. Drive exactly where I say," he whispered. And now his voice had changed, lower, more threatening. I swallowed hard and Nodded slowly. Okay, just don't hurt me, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, my hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. He told me to take a left down a road that had no streetlights and almost no traffic. And I did as I was told, my mind racing with fear, wondering what he wanted, if it was just money or if something worse was coming. I'm going to need your phone, he said next, and I passed it back slowly without looking. Heard him power it off, then throw it on the floor of the back seat. Good, he said. You're doing fine. But there was nothing fine about the situation. I was trapped in my own car with a man who had a gun and no clear reason for what he was doing. Eventually, we stopped near an old warehouse with chain link, fences, and overgrown grass. The place looked abandoned and forgotten. Turn off the engine, he said, and I did. Then he leaned forward and told me to get in the back seat. Don't make me repeat myself, he said when I hesitated. So, I unbuckled slowly, heart racing, and climbed into the back, sitting beside him. That's when I saw it clearly for the first time. The gun in his hand, the cold look in his eyes, and a duffel bag on the floor by his feet. You're going to wait here with me, he said. Someone's going to come, and you're going to drive us both somewhere else. Don't talk, don't move, don't do anything unless I say so. I nodded, trying not to cry. And we sat there in silence for what felt like forever. At some point, a car drove by far in the distance. But no one came, and then suddenly he snapped his head toward me and said, You think I won't use this? You think I'm bluffing? And he raised the gun slightly. I shook my head quickly, saying, No, I believe you, please. I'll do whatever you want. Shh. And he leaned back again, quiet, like a switch had flipped. After a while, I started to wonder if this was just a robbery or something else. Maybe he had killed someone. Maybe he was on the run. And I was just the unlucky person who picked him up. The more I thought about it, the more scared I got. And then I noticed something, a small light blinking near the edge of the dashboard. It was the dash cam, which I had forgotten about in the panic. It had been recording the whole time. The audio, the video, everything. I didn't know if it would help, but it gave me a tiny bit of hope. Maybe if he let me go, I could bring it to the police. Maybe they'd catch him finally. After almost an hour, a black SUV pulled up behind us, and two people got out. One of them walked over to the passenger, sighed, and opened the door. Get out, my passenger told me, and I obeyed, standing by the side of the car. He told me to open the trunk, and I did. Then he and the other man started unloading the duffel bag and something else I couldn't see clearly. It looked heavy, wrapped in a tarp. They stuffed it into the SUV while I stood there frozen, knowing I had just become part of something awful. Then the first man turned to me and said, You've done your part. Now lie down in the trunk. I stared at him in disbelief. Please don't, I begged. I won't say anything. I swear, just let me go. But he stepped forward and raised the gun. Get in, he said coldly. I started to cry, hands shaking, stepping toward the open trunk. Then suddenly there was a loud voice from across the street. Hey, what's going on? Someone shouted, and all three of us froze. It was a security guard from a nearby building, probably checking on the noise or the cars. My captor cursed and looked at the other man. Go, he shouted, and they both ran back to the SUV, jumping in and speeding off, leaving me standing there alone. I collapsed to the ground crying, shaking so hard I couldn't move. The security guard ran over and called the police, who arrived within minutes. I told them everything, and they pulled the dash cam footage from my car later that night. The police found the SUV abandoned a few miles away, but the men were gone. They searched the area but never caught them. The duffel bag and the tarp were missing too, and the police never told me what was inside, only that it was evidence in an ongoing investigation. I quit driving Uber that night, deleted the app, and never went back. For weeks I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how close I came to dying, how if that guard hadn't shown up at that exact moment, I wouldn't be here. Sometimes I think about the man's face, how calm he was, how sure of himself, like he'd done this before. Like I was just one part of a plan he didn't care about. I still get nervous driving alone, even in daylight. And if I ever see someone with a leather jacket and a cap, my heart skips a beat. I don't know where he is now, or what he's done since, but I know he's out there, and I know I was never supposed to walk away from that ride. I had just finished dinner with some coworkers after a long shift. Nothing fancy, just pizza and soda at a small place near the edge of town. It was getting late, and everyone was calling their rides home. I didn't drive, so I opened my Uber. App, like usual, requested a ride and waited outside while the others waved goodbye. The app said my driver's name was Darren, and he was in a white Toyota Camry, license plate for XU6. Something, I don't remember the rest now. The little icon showed him 4 minutes away, so I stood near the sidewalk under a dim streetlight. Scrolling through my phone, not really paying attention, the street was quiet, not many cars, and I noticed a white car slowing down ahead. It looked like a Camry, same shape and color. It stopped right in front of me, headlights on low, and the window rolled down slowly. The driver leaned over and said, "Uber for Jess." And I said, "Yeah," without even checking the plate. I was tired and just wanted to get home. The doors were already unlocked, so I got in the back seat, said thanks, and buckled up. The inside of the car was clean, smelled like pine or mint, and there was soft jazz playing on the radio, kind of relaxing, honestly. The driver didn't say much, just gave a small nod and started driving. I glanced at my phone to check the ETA, but oddly enough, the app still said Darren was 3 minutes away. I thought maybe it was just lagging or didn't update right away. Sometimes GPS is weird. So I closed it and stared out the window. It wasn't until about 5 minutes into the ride that something started to feel wrong. The roads didn't look familiar. I mean, I'm not great with directions, but I'd taken this route before, and this didn't feel like the way home. "Hey," I said, leaning forward a little. "Is this the usual way?" The driver didn't answer at first, just kept driving. Then he said, "GPS says fastest route." His voice was low and flat, no emotion. Something about it gave me goosebumps. I looked back down at my phone and reopened the app, and that's when my stomach dropped. My Uber ride had been canceled. And there was a message that said, "Your driver has arrived," with a photo of a completely different guy. Not the man driving me right now, and not this car either. My real driver was still out there somewhere, and I was in the wrong car with a stranger. "Wait, stop the car," I said, my voice shaky. "You're not my Uber," but he didn't. Stop, didn't even look at me, just kept driving, faster now, and the streets were darker. More empty, fewer lights, and no people. "Let me out," I shouted, starting to panic. I reached for the door handle, but the lock was on. The child safety kind that won't let you open it from the inside. I tried again, pulling harder, but it didn't budge. He just turned up the music slightly, still that soft jazz, like it was supposed to keep me calm while everything inside me screamed. "I'll scream," I said. "I'll call the police," but I had no signal, nothing, not a single bar. I tried anyway, dialing 911 over and over, but the call wouldn't go through. I even tried yelling out the window at one point when we passed a gas station, but he just sped up and turned onto another road, this one covered in potholes and lined with tall trees. I had no idea where we were anymore, completely lost. I kept begging him to stop, to let me go, to take my money or my phone or whatever he wanted. But he said nothing. No threats, no explanations, just drove. His hands steady on the wheel, eyes never leaving the road. Like this was all normal to him. Eventually I gave up yelling and just cried silently in the back seat, trying to think. Trying to remember everything about him, his clothes, his hair, his face, but the mirror was tilted just enough that I couldn't see him clearly. Only part of his chin and glasses. I started to look around the car for something, anything I could use, maybe a pen or a charger or even a heavy water bottle, but the back seat was spotless, empty. Like he had prepared it that way, and that scared me even more. This wasn't random, he knew what he was doing. Then the car slowed down, and for a second, I felt hope. Like maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe he was letting me go, but no, we had pulled up to an old building, looked like an abandoned warehouse or factory, surrounded by tall weeds and broken fence posts. There were no lights, just the car's headlights casting long shadows across the dirt and gravel. He parked, turned off the engine, and sat still, breathing slowly. I tried one more time, "Please. I won't tell anyone. Just let me out," I whispered. And for the first time, he turned around and I saw his face fully blank, pale like. He was wearing a mask but wasn't, just no emotion, like his eyes looked through me. "Not at me," he said. "Don't move," then got out of the car and shut the door. I heard him walking around to the trunk, opening it, metal scraping sounds. And that's when I panicked. Full-on panic. I climbed into the front seat, unlocked the doors, and flung mine open. Running as fast as I could into the trees beside the lot, I heard him yell something, then footsteps behind me, crunching gravel and brush. I didn't stop, didn't look back, just ran, branches scratching my arms, my legs. I kept running until I couldn't breathe, and then I saw a tan old shed or hunting cabin in the woods. Tiny, half-rotted, but it had a door, and I ran inside, slammed it shut, and crouched in the corner, holding my breath, praying he hadn't seen me. The footsteps got closer, slower now, searching. I heard them right outside the shed at one point. Leaves crunching, then silence. I waited for what felt like hours, too afraid to move. Finally, the footsteps faded, and I stayed there until dawn. When the light started to seep through the broken slats of the cabin, I came out shaking, and followed the direction of the rising sun until I found a road and flagged down a truck. The driver took one look at me, dirty, bloody from branches, and pulled over immediately, calling the police. I told them everything, showed them my phone. The canceled ride, the wrong man. And we even found security footage from a store I'd passed before getting in the car. It showed the white Camry pulling up, and me getting in without checking the plate. The police tried to trace the car, but it had fake plates, probably stolen. They never found him, never found the warehouse either, like it vanished. Or maybe I was just too far from where we started to recognize anything. I don't take rides alone anymore, don't trust apps, don't even wait outside by myself. And every time a white car passes me, my heart races, my hands shake, and I wonder if he's still out there, looking for the next person who doesn't check the plate. The next tired girl, too distracted to notice the face doesn't match the profile, because all it takes is one small mistake, 1 second of not paying attention, and you might get into a car that was never yours to begin with.